We're going to begin tonight with breaking news, with the nation on edge and in the middle of another night of protests. Tonight, the president says he is calling up, quote, thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers in Washington and calling on all of the nation's governors to deploy the National Guard to, quote, dominate the streets. Shortly after telling reporters that, and before Washington's curfew began, police used tear gas and rubber bullets to clear peaceful protesters out of Lafayette Park across from the White House. All this so the president could walk to nearby St. John's Episcopal Church for a photo op. Moments ago, the Episcopal Bishop of Washington called that an outrage, noting that the president didn't even stop to pray. She called it the shredding of our national fabric. The president is vowing to crack down on protests sparked by the death of George Floyd 1 week ago after he was arrested. And tonight, the county medical examiner in Minneapolis is calling his death a homicide, saying Floyd's heart stopped while being kneeled on by police. But Floyd's family says a private autopsy found he was killed by asphyxiation. And as we come on the air, protesters calling for justice for Floyd are already out in force nationwide, including thousands marching through the streets of Chicago. 23 states have already called up the National Guard, and more than 40 cities, including New York, Washington, and Los Angeles, are now under curfews. Well, there's a lot to report about tonight, and our team of correspondents is standing by. CBS's Kris Van Cleave is going to lead us off tonight from here in Washington. Kris?
Nora, we've had some tense moments this evening, but we've been watching the D.C. police as they have been taking demonstrators into custody. We are 2.5 hours into the curfew here in D.C. It's quieted down noticeably. We've had 2 days of peaceful protest followed by 2 nights of violent unrest. You're going to see a lot of police officers out in the streets of D.C. tonight. The goal is to keep things peaceful. Police flashbangs and tear gas hurled at protesters near the White House signaled the start of a curfew here.
Don't shoot! Don't shoot!
In Chicago, hundreds marched shouting, "Hands up, don't shoot." And in Minneapolis, heartbreak as the family of George Floyd visited the spot where he died while in police custody for the first time. His brother Terrence calling for an end to violence.
What are y'all doing? Y'all doing nothing. Because that's not going to bring my brother back at all.
But the dark of night has brought anything but peace. The entire Washington, D.C. National Guard has been activated after protesters faced off with police, torched cars, broke windows, and looted businesses across the nation's capital overnight. Police responding with tear gas.
There's nothing we can do against it.
88 were arrested here, more than 7,000 nationwide. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Smashed windows and looting are becoming a bigger story than the broken systems that got us here.
Tonight, the FBI is asking for any information about violent instigators at protests. CBS News has learned 2 days after George Floyd's death, the FBI picked up intelligence a white supremacist extremist Telegram channel incited followers to engage in violence by shooting in a crowd. D.C. Police Chief Peter Newsham.
The tactics that I saw last night by the people, the antagonists I will call them, appeared to be organized in nature.
Late this afternoon, Louisville's police chief was fired after officers and National Guardsmen shot and killed a protester. Police say they were being fired upon, but they did not have their body cameras on.
That's what we want.
There are signs police and protesters alike have had enough of the violence as demonstrators in Brooklyn formed a human chain to stop would-be looters. This afternoon, a dozen police officers took a knee in front of the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C. And in Shreveport, Louisiana, a police officer comforts a tearful teenager during a Black Lives Matter protest, telling him, "We're all here together." Kris Van Cleave, CBS News, Washington.